Pastor BJ here, coming to you from Kirkmont Church. One of the things I love most about the Bible is that it is an unfiltered document. You'll be reading through a story and it will just give you these details that are not necessarily kid-friendly. I remember when I was teaching my daughter the story of Adam and Eve, and we read the part about them being naked, and she giggled relentlessly. In fact, the story of Adam and Eve has become sort of a test case for how you illustrate the Bible in a kid-friendly way while trying to make sure you include those details. Well, today, we're going to take a look at a very unusual detail that is inserted in the arrest story of Jesus. So, grab your high-octane coffee. Let's make this happen. So if you take the time to read all four of the Gospels, one of the things that you'll notice is that there are multiple stories repeated. But what's interesting is that very few of the stories are told in all four of the Gospels, usually just the main events. And one of those stories is the story of Jesus being arrested. Now, in this particular story as it goes, Jesus had just left the Last Supper with his disciples. He was in the Garden of Gethsemane praying. His disciples kept falling asleep. And the Roman guards who had been brought there by Judas show up to arrest Jesus. It's about that time that Judas kisses Jesus, and Jesus said his famous words, "Do you betray the Son of Man with a kiss?" Now, shortly after that, a little melee breaks out. Peter breaks out his sword and ends up cutting off a man's ear, and Jesus kind of stops things and heals the man's ear, and he is ultimately arrested. Now, it's at that point that the disciples flee, right? After this fight had started up, they realized that this was a losing endeavor and that Jesus had just been arrested. But if you read in the Gospel of Mark, in chapter 14, there's a detail that is added to this story that none of the other Gospels have. So let's take a look at it now. Mark 14, verses 51 and 52 say this, "And a young man followed him, with nothing but a linen cloth about his body, and they seized him. But he left the linen cloth and ran away naked." So I suspect if I were reading this story to my daughter, she would be giggling hysterically at this point. But it's just this very strange detail that's added. And it makes you want to go, what is that all about? So let's unpack this a little bit. What do we know here? So the disciples obviously were there with Jesus in the garden, but it was really just sort of the inner circle. But presumably when the Roman legion showed up to arrest Jesus, it attracted some attention. And apparently it attracted the attention of this young man here. Now, if you want to look this up, this is what's called the naked fugitive. I wouldn't suggest putting that into your search engine. I would look something like the young man who fled naked in the book of Mark or something a little bit more detailed. So, who is this guy and what in the world is going on here? Well, we don't know specifically who it is. It doesn't tell us. But we can make a pretty good guess that this is probably a guy named John Mark, the author of the book of Mark. And there are really just two good reasons why we think that. The first and most obvious is that this doesn't seem like a detail that anybody would want to insert into a story unless they had sort of firsthand knowledge. And so most people think that John Mark is including this into his gospel because that was him. He knew firsthand what was going on. But the other reason that we think it might be him is that the linen cloth is an important detail in this story that indicates wealth. So the average person at that particular time would have been wearing clothes made out of wool. But linen, the fine linen cloth here, indicates that this person is probably a little bit wealthier. And we know from other places in Scripture that John Mark was from a wealthy family. Now, what is he wearing? It says that a linen cloth, he was wrapped up in a linen cloth. It could have been like some type of a robe or some kind of a sleeping garment. And whenever they try to grab a hold of him, it rips away. Or it could have been that he woke up in the middle of the night and just grabbed a bed sheet and wrapped it around him. Either way, once they arrested Jesus and they start trying to take his disciples, this guy is gone. And here's the takeaway from this story. The reason I'm highlighting so many of these bizarre verses in the Bible is because it gives us an occasion to stop and say, wait a minute, why is that there? What's going on here? What can we learn about this very weird detail about this guy running away naked? And what it tells us is that none of the words in Scripture are there by accident. They're there for a deliberate purpose. And we might not be able to have all the details. We don't know for sure if this is John Mark who is referenced here. But what it does do is it forces us to think a little bit more deeply about the Scriptures. And though there may be some bizarre verses in the Bible, it's always worthwhile to spend our time studying. Hey, so if you're still watching this video, let me just take a minute to say thanks for watching. We really appreciate all of the folks who take the time to take a look at these videos that we're making. If whatever venue you're watching this on, just go ahead and click follow or like or subscribe. And if these are videos that you really are blessed by, go ahead and share them with other folks. We are making these videos for our Kirkmont community because during a time like this, we want to try to get some good biblical content out to folks. But if you're blessed by it, bless somebody else. We'd really appreciate it.